Mindanao, 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 Mindanao.
Good day everyone, especially to you sir. We are the group 3. So our topic is all about related law Philippine indigenous community. So before we tackle all about that, so we have the two objectives. First is to identify the various indigenous people of the Philippines and describe their culture, analyze the diversity of the indigenous people of the Philippines. We know that the Philippines ethnic language is diverse because the Philippines is an archipelago of 7,500 islands, and there is so many ethnic groups in the country. One estimated a very conservative fact, it comes from Dr. Robert Fox, a former director of National Museum, and he said that there are at least 106 ethnic groups in the Philippines. It was conservative because in terms of language, we have more than 106 published by the Summer Institute of Linguistics. It mentioned more than 180 language. So as we know, non-language is a primary criterion for defining ethnicity. That why in the Philippines we also refer to ethnic groups and ethno-linguistic groups is we speak of a certain language, such as here in the Palawan we have Kayanon and Cagayanon, and so on. So not only that, we also have diverse religions group that also contributes to our ethnic landscape. Now, looking at the 2000 census of population and housing in the Philippines, it was declared that we have 8 major ethno-linguistic groups that comprise the 82% of the population in the Philippines. So, what are those? First is Tagalog with 28%, Cebuano 23%, Ilocano 9%, Hiligaynon 7%, Bicol 6%, Waray 3%, Kapampangan 3%, Pangasinan 1%. Only 8 groups, which make the other mandatory, comprise the 100 of the. So, what do we mean by indigenous people? I will using two different disciplines. First is defining indigenous people based on the language of anthropology, and next is based on its legal definition. First, anthropological. So, when we say anthropological, we are pertaining to people, we are behavior and ano yung pinagmulan. So, the original inhabitants, or particularly in the Philippines, archipelago are the Negritos. They first to occupy our land and later they were followed by others. So, they are a lot of communities who maintain their traditional practices because of their high respect with their culture, their traditional beliefs. But then again, when this colonizer came in the story, they now colonized the country and had been adopted Christianity and have been also adopted Western culture. But there are such group in the Philippines that have maintained their traditionally practices, and because they practice autonomy, they prove and they had a high respect on what they believe. So, we also have the legal definition of indigenous people based on the law enacted in 1997. This is the EPRA law, or commonly known as the Republic Act 8371. So what does it says? A group of people who through resistance to political, social, and cultural inroads of colonization, non-indigenous religions are and cultures became historical differentiate from the majority of the Filipinos. So we have 8 longest group, majority of them are Roman Catholic. Some of them embrace Christianity in terms of formal affiliation, but in terms of formal practices, they had been claimed their enemies or the prehistoric practice talking about non-indigenous religious. It takes both Christianity and Islam because both are not indigenous in the Philippines. That is why the NSIP or the National Commission of Indigenous People, they include Muslim groups and the main part of the indigenous people, but in this lecture we will including the Bangsamoro because we are talking about the pre-Spanish colonial practices, and upon looking at arrival of the Spanish, there were the existence of this group of Muslims and Bangsamoro. In some part of Tawi-Tawi and Mindanao, or the southern part from Pampanga and the north that had been practicing Islam.
Comes to types of resistance, we have two various form, the outright warfare versus colonizers. Examples, Moro Wars and Igorot Raids. Moro Wars. In the Philippines history, a series of scattered campaigns involving American troops and Muslim bands on Mindanao, Philippines. The Moro fought for religious rather than political reasons, and their actions were unconnected with those of Filipino revolutionaries who conducted the Philippine-American War on 1899 to 1902. For Igorot Raids. Igorot Raids, it is a strange thing that the history textbooks commonly in use in the public-private schools of the Republic of the Philippines never mentioned that the Igorot peoples of northern Luzon fought for their liberty against foreign aggregation all during the 350 years that their lowland brethren were being ruled over by Spanish invaders. One history book says we can never know the history of the Filipino people during the Spanish period because they were slaves to the Spaniards, or at least forced to play the roles of slaves. For retreat to the hinterlands, we have two examples, the Mangyan of Mindoro and Remontado. The Mangyan of Mindoro. Mangyan is the generic name for the 8 indigenous groups found in the island of Mindoro, southwest of the islands of Luzon. The Philippines, each with its own tribal name, language, and custom. The total population may be around 280, but official statistics are difficult to determine under the conditions of remote areas and reclusive tribal groups, and some having little, if any, outside world contact. So for the second examples, we have Remontado. The Remontados are members of the Negrito ethno-linguistic group inhabiting the uplands of Rizal and Quezon provinces along the Sierra Madre Mountains. They derive their name from the Spanish verb remontar, meaning to flee to the hills, to frighten away or go back to the mountains. These indigenous peoples or IPs are said to be the descendants of lowlanders who opted to live in the mountains to avoid subjugation by the Spaniards. Subsequently, they intermarried with the Negrito groups, also referred to as Dumagat. They refer to call themselves tagabundok from the mountains, or magkakaingin, those practices kaingin.
If we base in our population in Mindanao, at present, Mindanao Lumals account for 2.1 million. Out of the total 6.5 million indigenous people national live. Also, we are talking about the population of indigenous. Based on the books that I read, there is a percentage of indigenous people reside in Mindanao. This percent is 61%. Indigenous people roughly constitute 10 to 15% of the total population of the Philippines and are present in 65 of the country's 78 provinces. The majority of indigenous people, 61%, are found in Mindanao. 33% are found in Luzon, and 6% are found in Visayas. And the last, the current status of indigenous people in the Philippines. Our country's indigenous population thus continues to be estimated at between 10 to 20% of national population of 100,981,437 based on the 2015 population census.
So, as you can see, we gave four indigenous people of the Philippines. So, what are these groups? Cluster 100 groups packed into specific groupings for us to better determine and discuss their characteristics. They are the Negrito, Cordillera people, Cagayan Valley groups, and Mangyan.
Negrito. The name Negrito means little black people in Spanish. They are darker skin and generally have blacker, shorter, curly hair. They are called the Agta Negritos of the Philippines. Negrito culture. The Agta of the northern Sierra Madre are still nomadic, while the rest are semi-nomadic or semi-sedentary. Semi-nomadic or semi-sedentary. A member of a people living usually in portable or temporary but stayed in a year, unlike nomadic dwellings and practicing seasonal migration but having a base camp at which some crops are cultivated during periods of settlement. Have lost their original languages and now speak languages borrowed from neighboring populations. They are experiencing language loss because the Philippine government would like to make English the official language, considering it is a language of advancement. The Philippines are ready to economically take a step forward. The masses, however, would like to speak their native language. They encourage outsiders to speak their language and they believe that it is very easy to pick up. The Agta language is nearly extinct. They Agta are losing more people than they are gaining. Language need people to survive or it will vanish. The Agta are strong people and have endured a lot. Their language is beautiful and would be such a shame to lose.
Cordillera people. Indigenous peoples of the Cordillera Administrative Region or CAR in the northern Luzon. The Cordillera is located in northern Luzon. It is a mountain range comprising 1/6 of the total land area of Luzon Island. It is home to around 1.2 million indigenous peoples. They inhabit the Grand Cordillera Central, the biggest mountain range in the country. The Cordillera Central or Cordillera Range is a massive mountain range 320 kilometers or 198 miles long north-south and 118 kilometers or 73 miles east-west. The Cordillera mountain range is situated in the north-central part of the island of Luzon in the Philippines. Cordillera people: Buntok, Ibaloy, Ifugao, Isnig, Intig, Iwak, Kalanguya, Kalinga, Kankanay. Buntok, also known as Buntok Igorots, live in the and around the town of Buntok in the Cordillera zone. Ibaloy, also known as Nabaloy, are one of the indigenous peoples of the Philippines who live mostly in the southern part of being located in the Cordillera of northern Luzon. Ifugao. The Ifugao region, which surrounds Banawi, is known for its rice terraces hills, which are some of the most impressive in the world, covering 4,000 miles of landscape. Isnag. Isnag people, also referred to as the Isnig and Apayao, are an Austronesian ethnic group native to Apayao province in the Philippines. Intig, otherwise known literally Intinig or Tingguan, have their different dialects and cultures because of its geographic locations. Iwak, also spelled Iwaak, is a South Central Cordilleran language spoken by almost 3,300 people around the Cordillera Central Mountain Range of Luzon. Kalanguya, also referred to as the Ikalahan, are an Austronesian ethnic group most closely associated with the Philippines Cordillera Administrative Region. Kalinga. The Kalinga have rich cultural traditions and expressions of music, dance, and artisan work. And the last, Kankanay. The northern Kankanais believe in many supernatural beliefs and omens and in gods and spirits like the Anito and nature spirits.
Cordillera culture consists of autonomous village called Ili. The Ili is local concept of people and territory among the Cordillera peoples which may be defined as the commonwealth territory of an indigenous settlement, similar to the concept of homelands. Among tribal peoples, fire occupation, use and development of the land is the basis defining the boundaries between Ili's ancestral domains, territorial boundaries bedding in Mount Province Bugis in peace, pack of foraging areas have been established between Ilis and recorded in collective memories of the people. Boundary markers are usually the natural geophysical features like mountain ridge and water bodies. Traditionally endemic prefer in the area, the term Igorot is an old Tagalog word meaning people from the mountains and is a general term used to include all the mountain tribes from the Cordilleras. The Spanish adopted this term, but it was generally used in a negative manner referring to savage and backward people of the mountains. Cordillera materials culture, popularly known as Ipuga rice gods, the bull all embodied deities and ancestral spirit of the Ifugao include the Mumbaki ritual spirits who are direct descendants from which the object has been inherited. Ritual objects were carved out of the durable wood tree species such as Ujao, Nara, and Amugawon mulabi from the forest. Kalinga skirt or cane. This type of wraparound skirt is generally known as tapis in the Tagalog language and as the cane to the Kalinga. It is characterized by horizontal stripes bordered by decorated panels along the joints and edges. Typical fashion, this example is further embellished with embroidery, beads, and mother-of-pearl shell.
Cagayan Valley Indigenous Communities: Bugkalot, Gadang, Ibanag, Ibatan, Isanay, Hawis, Itbayatin, Ivatan, Kalinga, Malawig, and Yugad. So these are some of the indigenous communities in Cagayan Valley. So Cagayan has a prehistoric civilization which is rich and diverse culture. So according to the archaeologists, the earliest man in the Philippines most likely lived in Cagayan thousands of years ago. So according to what I have read, the earliest man in Cagayan was a short, dark-skinned nomad known as the Ata or Negrito. But they were later moved to the uplands by the Indomalays, who eventually became the Ibanag, Itawit, Yogad, Gadang, Iraya, and Malawig. The natives of Cagayan who actually came from one ethnicity. So they were the people found by the Spaniards in the different villages along the rivers all over Cagayan. It was only in 1583 that Cagayan began to be called a province through a Spanish royal decree which originally comprises the whole of northeastern Luzon, plus the island in Balintang Channel. So this means that the present provinces of Batanes, Isabela, Quirino, Nueva Vizcaya, and even portions of the province of Kalinga and Apayao, where we can find the indigenous people of Cagayan.
Common characteristics. Speak Ibanagic language. Example, good morning in English. In Ibanag, Diyos taoma. Second example, good afternoon in English. In Ibanag, Diyos tafogag. Those are the example of Ibanagic language or Ibanag language. Dominantly Christian. The Philippines proudly boasts to be the only Christian nation in Asia. More than 86% of the population is Roman Catholic, 6% belong to various nationalized Christian cults, and another 2% belong to well over 100 Protestant denominations, and relatively high degree of acculturation.
Definition of Magian groups is the generic name for the 8 indigenous groups found on the island of Mindoro, southwest of the island of Luzon, the Philippines, each with its own tribal name, language, and customs. Magian groups of Mindoro: Alagan, Bacon, Buhid, Gubatnon, Hanonon, Mangyaw, Iraya, Ratagnon, Tagyawan, Taubid. Example of Magian groups. Magian is the generic name for the 8 indigenous group found on the island of Mindoro, southwest of the island of Luzon, the Philippines, each with its own tribal name, language, and customs. The total population may be around 280,000, but official statistics are difficult to determine under the condition of remote areas, reclusive tribal groups, and some having little, if any, outside world contact.